This is the Mini Electric, and as the name suggests, it's an electric Mini. Now, Mini have been working on this now for well over a decade, so I think it's pretty fair to say that we can expect big things. Me, personally, I'm expecting it to be comfortable, practical, fun to drive, and most of all, I'm expecting it to live up to promises about its range. But first, what is it? Well, it's a conventional Mini that swapped the internal combustion engine parts for an electric motor and a set of batteries. It'll sell for a starting price of around £24,000 and in theory has a range of 145 miles. But here's the thing, lots of car makers tell you what they think their cars will do in theory. Today, I want to find out for myself exactly what this car can do. Today, I want to find out whether Mini is telling the truth. I'm in the Cotswolds right now, and I'm going to film around various places in southern England and then deliver the car back to Mini at the factory in Oxford. It's a journey the Mini should be capable of, but will the reality be different to the theory? During the course of the drive, we'll keep an eye on the range and we'll see exactly how far this car goes versus its claimed range. But straight away, there's a bit of a problem. This car uses a 32.6 kilowatt hour battery and it has an official range of 145 miles. But on the screen, the car's telling me it'll do 180 miles. But watch this, if I put it into sport mode, it's telling me now that it can do 108 miles. That's 72 miles difference based on the flick of a switch, not to mention a massive overestimation of the theoretical range in the car's Green Plus mode. Speaking of Green Plus, in this particular mode the car changes its power delivery but also switches off heating and heated seats, so you may have to prioritize comfort or range. Right, let's talk about the interior. It's pretty standard Mini in all honesty. In the middle of the dashboard you get a big circular area with a sat-nav. Sat-nav is standard in the Mini Electric and that's because it's pretty much essential. You need a system that tells you where you're located as well as where all your charging points are. One really useful addition is a green bubble around your current location that shows the car's range. This gives you a great idea of how far you can travel and helps alleviate range anxiety. As for the rest of the cabin, up front it's quite lovely with the same contemporary dashboard and spacious, comfortable seats. The rear seats, which have always been quite tight for anyone 5'11" or over, are now even more cramped due to the batteries under the rear bench, although the boot is the same size as the standard hatch. Arguably the most standout feature in the Mini Electric is this screen located just in front of your steering wheel. I feel like when you drive this car, you're going to be spending a lot of time looking at this because this is where you find out your state of charge, how much range you have left, what speed you're doing, or whether you're asking for power from the motor or regenerating and putting power back into the batteries. Now, the car's telling me it will do 65 miles before it dies. And I've only done 24.4 miles of driving, so that's not that encouraging. But also, quite confusingly, on the battery indicator, it says I've got about 75% charge left in the battery. So at the moment, I'm a little bit confused about how far this car has left to go before it conks out. But I'm just gonna plow on and see what happens. What's the Mini Electric like to drive then? Well, pretty similar to a standard Mini, except for the fact that it's really, really quiet. Obviously, there's no internal combustion engine, but there is a little bit of noise. There's actually a little speaker located up front that makes quite a low-pitched whirring noise to warn pedestrians of your presence. One of the biggest things you'll notice when driving this car though is that you can pretty much drive it with one pedal if you want to. There are two levels of energy recovery. There's a switch on the center console that lets you switch between low energy recovery mode and high energy recovery mode. So if you lift off in low mode, the car will basically slow down like a normal Mini. But in high energy recovery mode, you lift off and the car slows down really aggressively. You can actually come to a complete stop just by lifting off the accelerator. Obviously, this is a Mini and it has to be fun to drive. And actually, the Mini Electric is not too bad. The electric motor makes 184 horsepower, 270 Newton meters, and it will do 0 to 62 in 7.3 seconds. A little bit slower than a petrol-powered equivalent, but still very quick and still quite a lot of fun to drive. One of the best things about the handling is the low center of gravity, which means you can throw it into corners virtually without lifting off. You can really carry all of that valuable speed you've amassed on the straights through bends without braking and losing momentum. The 50-50 weight distribution helps keep the car incredibly well balanced. It might not have the same old school charm as a traditional Mini, but it's certainly a car that can put a smile on your face. Okay, so we've reached a big milestone. 50% of the battery has been exhausted. The car tells me I've traveled 45 miles and I have about 45 miles of range left to go. So in total, it might be able to do somewhere in the region of 100 miles, although the proof is in the pudding. And I've pulled over at this very rainy, very windy, but very relevant wind farm. And that gives me a chance to maybe point out a few of the exterior highlights on this car, starting at the front. So you'll notice that all Mini Electrics have a smoothed over front grille, and that's in the aid of aerodynamics. You also, on this car, get a garish yellow blade with a Mini Electric logo, and the color is replicated most notably on the wing mirror caps, a logo on the side and rear, and also around the rim of these really cool aerodynamically optimized alloy wheels, which, if you look really closely, actually resemble a UK 3-pin power socket. Now, all of those elements come together to help kind of scream, this is the Mini Electric. But if you don't want to communicate to the world that you have a Mini Electric, you don't have to have them. Mini will actually remove all those elements, and you can, if you want, for no cost, fly under the radar and have a Mini Electric that looks almost completely like a standard car. Right, that's enough talking. I'm getting out of the rain. I should probably point out that I've been driving this car, by the way, in the most efficient Green Plus mode. And if I hadn't mentioned it earlier, I'll mention it again. That completely deactivates all your heating and your heated seats. So I am freezing, but I'm doing it in the name of science in order to give this car the best possible chance to deliver its range. On we go. Right, let's talk about charging. Always very important with an electric car. And the Mini Electric has a lithium-ion battery with a usable capacity of 32.6 kilowatt hours. Now, that's relatively small in comparison to something like a Nissan Leaf, which has a 40 kilowatt hour capacity. But that has its pros and cons. One of the cons is that the range is quite limited, only 145 miles in theory. But on the upside, because it's small, it charges relatively quickly. If you use a 50 kilowatt DC public fast charger, you can recharge from 0 to 80% in around 36 minutes. With an 11 kilowatt public charger, you can top up to 100% in just over 2.5 hours. If you're at home and you're using a mini wall box, then the car can recharge in around 3 hours. But even if you get completely stuck and you only have access to a normal 3-pin socket, you can top this thing up overnight in around 12 hours. And that makes the Mini definitely worth considering, especially if you have off-street parking and reasonably short commutes. Over long distances, if you fail to plan adequately, then there might be times, as there would be in a petrol car to be fair, when you find yourself running low on charge. Okay, situation update. We have 10 miles of range left in the battery. The factory is around about 7 miles away, so I think we're good. It's not quite squeaky bum time, but I definitely don't want to be driving for much longer than that. Okay, the car now says I'm down to 5 miles of range and I know the factory's just around the corner. I think we've made it. Do I want to go any further and run it down completely? Don't think so. Don't fancy getting stranded in the middle of Oxford. But overall, I think, yeah, decent job by the Mini Electric. Doesn't quite, in my hands anyway, live up to their claims, but pretty decent on the whole. There it is. There's the Mini factory. I've just about managed it. Managed to not run out of juice. So the last question then, should you buy a Mini Electric? Well, if you're going to use this as your main car and you travel long distances, probably not going to work out for you. However, if you're using this as a second car and you regularly commute on short distances, this thing's brilliant. If ever there was a car that was suited to an electric model, it's the Mini. Its compact design, enjoyable handling, and upmarket look and feel actually make it feel a tad more desirable than some of its rivals. At £24,000, it's not exactly cheap, there are less expensive, more practical alternatives, but there's an undeniable charm to the Mini Electric that others might not be able to match.
We've done it. We've made it back to Mini Oxford, the home of Minis, where the first ever Mini rolled off the production line in 1959, and where these cars will be built. What we've learned is that, yeah, it's been a long time coming, but now it's here. I think it's a car that we can all get on board with. Yeah, okay, it might not be the Mini revolution that some people might have expected, but what it is a really good evolution of an already brilliant car.
The next few years will determine exactly how successful the Mini Electric might be. It will face some very stiff competition that provides better range for less money, but the Mini Electric delivers on most of its promises. It's comfortable, stylish, fun to drive, and while we'd like it to go a little further than 98 miles, for most people, it will be an excellent companion, particularly on shorter journeys.